Welcome to FinFactor. I'm your host, Blaine Bertsch, co-founder and CEO at Dry Run Cashflow Forecasting Software, where we help the office of the CFO leave spreadsheets behind and model everything from cash flow through to complex scenarios with clarity and control. And joining me today is Ken Lacroix. Ken is a seasoned finance leader who has spent his career guiding businesses through growth, restructuring, and mergers and acquisitions, all while leveraging technology, operational insight, and modern CFO models to drive scalability and enterprise value. Today, we'll unpack the practical power of the 13-week cash flow forecasting, from stabilizing cash flow to guiding growth across industries. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Blaine.
So the 13-week cash flow forecast, it's funny. We talk with a lot of CFOs, in a lot of oftentimes mid-market businesses, and it's surprising how often or how many of them kind of turn away or actually ignore such a fundamental tool in their toolkit.
Well, it's deceptively difficult. So anyone can set up 13 columns. The format of a 13-week cash flow is very simple on paper. You have your inflows, you got your outflows, you've got those 13 weeks, and everything magically, sort of sums up. But when you go to actually put the data in, very, very difficult to go from reality into that structure.
Yeah, we of course we see that every day. There's and as businesses get bigger, like we were talking, you're getting the 25 to 500 million, the north of 50 million. There's a lot of moving parts, and it's as much as everything seems buttoned up. It's like, well, they got an ERP, but it's kind of a mess. Well, and it's not really up to date. Well, they kind of do their books right at the end of the month. There and on and on and on. And so often it's like the business is flying blind, or they're flying on. A lot of times there's a little bit of data. There's a little bit of information. There's a little bit of a forecast, but they're nearly blind. They're driving where they barely see past the front of their hood.
And again, deceptively so, right? It seems like something should be very easy to do. And it is, there's a lot of drivers when it comes to cash flow. And it's also the mindset of shifting from the profit and loss statement to more the balance sheet approach, more the cash approach, which is diametrically opposed to how we want to present the financials in businesses of this size and under the revenue recognition, the accrual method, and all of that. So, I was going through a cash flow last week with a client, and they said, well, where's my salaries that are going out? I see this number, but that's way lower than my salaries. Oh, well, that's your net pay for all of your people that are on staff. Oh, okay. Well, I look at the payroll taxes going out, and we don't pay that much in payroll taxes. We don't have 40% of our payroll going out in taxes. Oh, well, that's not the payroll tax that you have as an expense. Those are all the things you're withholding from your employees for state and local and federal income tax and Social Security on their side and your side. So it's a completely different mindset than I think where most of us live in a day-to-day basis, which makes it, again, sort of an order of magnitude a little bit harder than most things we do in a spreadsheet.
Well, and I think one of the biggest challenges is we're kind of reconciling how granular the data needs to be to actually get something accurate. But when you get up to the point where it's like, hey, you want the management team or CEO or whatever to see like this is what's kind of happening, they don't want that. They want something pretty high level, right? But it has to be accurate,
right?
And so it makes it a real challenge.
It is highly granular, and they just want to know, okay, well, when do we run out of cash, or when do we need to borrow, or when does it get replenished? And it seems like a simple answer. One of the things I like to talk about for the 13-week cash flow is comparing it to what happened versus what you expected to happen. Another complexity, because again, with Excel, you can easily move the columns over, but then comparing what you thought would happen, say last week, let's say this is a Monday, we want to compare what happened in the bank account through, say, Friday night or Sunday night, whatever your cutoff might be in terms of your business. But now you're in a position where there are differences. We thought we would collect this much money and we didn't. So the important thing to remember in those, and again, what makes this a little more complex, if it's a timing difference, we thought we would receive payment on that invoice on Thursday, and it doesn't look like it's going to land until Tuesday of this week. That's not something we need to investigate because it's just a timing difference. It's going to happen anyway. but it's something that takes a lot of effort in our cash flow forecast because now we have to move it from last week into this week and somehow explain it and keep track of it. Then the second piece is, well, what if that invoice was supposed to come in and it's not going to? What if that payment is not going to happen? That's a permanent difference. That makes the schedule super easy because you don't have to do anything else. It's just horrible on the business. Those are things we need to investigate. Those are things we need to account for. Those are things we need to track down and find root cause analysis. How do we get to that permanent difference? So it seems like it should be fairly straightforward, and it's not. And it seems as though you should be able to summarize things quickly, and it's not. And it seems as though you should be able to compare things to what you assumed, and it's not. And I think all those things add up to a finance department that, let's face it, if you're in that $50 to $500 million range, you're always going to have more to do than you have bandwidth for. It's just the way it works. People don't invest early in finance. They invest as they go. They tune the automobile as it's racing around the track. And so it's just, there's always a bandwidth issue, and there's always something pressing. There's always more to do. There's always some more things to do. And that's where we like sort of automation to take care of some of those bandwidth issues. But again, it's not the fault of the finance department or the business. They're growing and there's a lot going on, and there's just not enough extra bandwidth.
Yeah, and there's always a cap on a business. Like margins are tight. Despite what I think sometimes what the public thinks businesses are, they always hear the gross, right?
Yep.
Oh, it's $100 million business. Like, yeah, did it cost them an extra 110 million to run?
No,
public doesn't think about that.
We have to remind people that your employees, if you don't share some part of your finances with them, they assume sales equals profits. They really do.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's always so much more complicated and so much tighter. And if you've socked away a little bit of money, it's just going into buying something to help you get through the next year. Like rarely is there a whole lot of extra floating around. So you can't have a giant, you can't have an unending finance department. And if you did, it probably would still bring in other sort of levels of complication. But I think the reason this obviously is so topical is right now, we talk with companies every day. We talk with CFOs every day. It's a lot more of a challenge out there than it's been in quite a long time. And cash flow is right up there because things are tight and there's just uncertainty. It's not even sometimes that businesses are in distress. Even it's just, there's a lot of uncertainty. How do you suggest that a business like actually start to implement something like this? What are some of the things, like if they don't feel like they're getting the information they need right now, or just sort of a slice of it, where's a good place to start when you don't have the capacity to necessarily go all in?
Sure. So I think the 80-20 rule really applies in finance. I keep trying to apply it in accounting, and that's a whole separate discussion. I think it belongs in accounting as well. We can get numbers faster that are not as accurate, but much more timely and helpful. Separate conversation for a separate time. But on the finance side, the 80-20 rule really helps you out because no plan survives its first day in battle. So, don't struggle to get the cash flow right. Grab the big stuff. Grab the ones that is going to happen, and then just have a factor. I call it other. Other is one of my favorite line items on a schedule, because now I can say, look, I've accounted for 50, 60, 70% of my cash that's going to come in from our customers, and the rest is going to vary week to week over time. So I'm just going to put a standard percentage there, call it 10%, 15%, 20% of my expected cash flow, put it there and not analyze it. But the big numbers I do want to analyze. Same holds true on the expenses, especially the controllable expenses. Most expenses are not controllable in the short run, unfortunately. Rent is rent. You're going to renegotiate it at some point, but that's likely 36 to 60 months away. So get the big things in there. You kind of know payroll. Get payroll to the 80% level. Don't worry so much about, I don't know what the deduction is going to be for this or there's that, and we're going to pay commissions and all that. Just get it close. Get some of those big numbers in there. And again, another other in there, just a certain factor, because sometimes you actually can control when you pay the expenses. And so just hit the big stuff. Find 5 lines on the top and 10 lines on the bottom, 8 lines on the bottom, 5 to 10 lines of inflow. and 5 to 10 lines of outflow just to get started, just to know if you're going to have an extra 20 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand, 200 grand. It doesn't matter if it's $18,433 versus $19,210. That doesn't matter. It's around 20 grand. Perfect. Move on. So I think that's the most important thing to remember is just because Excel can calculate to 27 decimal points doesn't mean we need it to.
Yeah, and you'll know it's a never ending hole you'll dig when you try and be penny perfect, and it's especially the forecast. The forecast is never overly accurate. You know, it was last weekend we got caught in the rain because we were out on our bikes and it said it was going to hit at 5 o'clock and it was off by 2 full hours. Like, you know, we got rain on, right? Like that's what happens. But you get a ballpark. So for a company that a lot of the ones that we talk with, I'm assuming you see it a lot too, when they're highly ARAP driven rather than cash sales, then that's usually one of the biggest problems because you have the timings of this inflow and outflow that are such a big issue. I know I was talking with a CFO last week and we were talking about just one of his issues is like, I can see this, like I can see my ARAP. I just can't see anything past it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's always a surprise. And so we were talking about, well, how could you work in some of the potential sales data in some sort of realistic fashion to try and figure out what's a little further out, what is going to feed this ARAP so you can start to see potential issues that might be arriving a little further out. Like how do you sort of reconcile that till it gets down to the sort of detail level?
So that adds certainly another layer of complexity to things, but the answer lies in your history. So if we look back 52 or 53 weeks, we should start to see some seasonality. We should start to see some of that. Now, historically, managing that in Excel is a complete nightmare and fraught with all kinds of, I'll just call it spaghetti formulas, if you will, that you can easily lose track of things. So that's where we like to put a wrapper around it. That's where the technology comes into play. That's where, you know, if you can get an application such as the one you guys have and others that somehow help you understand easily sort of what happened and have that look backwards to say, oh, here's a customer that orders 4 times a year or once a year or any of those things. Yeah. I would say also, though, only focus on the big ones and have an other column to say, well, this is approximately what those others are. Again, once we pull out a spreadsheet, us finance folks, especially if we came from the accounting side, we really want to get to those 2 decimal places. We really want to nail that answer. And boy, we'll spend hours trying to nail that perfect answer. And, you know, the mail doesn't come one day. So, you know, the mail didn't come on Friday. We're closed on the weekends and we get twice as much mail on Monday. Well, your schedule's going to be off. So,
yeah, we've recommended that, you know, the 80-20 is just a nice way to phrase it. But I know we've talked with CFOs before and said, like, look, just focus on the top 15% of your customers that are the big ones, and which big ones chronically pay late. And all the little ones just like set DSO and let it run. Like you don't need to have because it's just an exercise in futility to go down to that. And it's you know, but it's hard to figure out where's the right enough detail and enough big picture, and where's that sort of middle ground.
So what we often find is that a lot of companies don't put enough effort into collection. They hit collection when it almost becomes a surprise. And I think collection needs to be handled at the sale. There needs to be, in my perfect world, there's a discussion in the sales team about when we expect the customer to pay when we make the sale, and have those open discussions across the different silos of the business. Again, as you're growing from a smaller company to a mid-sized company, these silos pop up and there are fewer conversations between them. But having a customer that pays on time consistently every time, I think can afford to have a tiny bit of less margin in them than a customer that is very variable, often pays late, never follows up on their promises, takes credit memos or takes adjustments to the invoice and all of that. So, you know, now we're talking about not just a 13-week cash flow, not just here's my AR, but here's how my customers behave. And I think that's where
Yeah.
there's a lot of profit and loss by 1,000 cuts happening in organizations, because again, a
Yeah.
consistent customer that pays on time each and every time, it's extremely valuable to the organization, extremely valuable to my cash flow forecast, but extremely valuable to the organization as well. And having those discussions around
Yeah.
collection behavior with the sales team, and the others that are involved in the process, the fulfillment side, the operations side, I think there's lots of opportunity there to have conversations.
Yeah, and it's as we've always said, business is done between people, and like I remember back to my agency days, and we did like mostly government work. We did a lot of enterprise work, and when you're working with large organizations, the before you even get to the point of invoicing, the delays can be really frustrating. And it's the devil's in the details. You get delays you could have customers that's like, technically they kind of pay on time, but we're always invoicing 60 or 90 days later than we expected to because there are these silly little delays, right? And so there's information there that can be used to figure out like who are our most valuable clients, who are the right ones that are really working for us, and who aren't, and how do we get money moving through the organization and cash coming in. There's like you said, a death by 1,000 cuts if money's not moving. And I think now it's like chronic delays. I can just feel it when I'm talking with people, and I felt it back in 2008, 2009. That's what people are facing today. Is it's delay tactics all the way through everything, all the way to the point of actually getting paid. So if you're you're a CFO at a company here, and you're saying, okay, we're kind of feeling that. We're feeling this little bit of confusion, but my team is up to their ears already in all the work they need to do. Like you said, how do you recommend sort of implementing an 80-20-ish sort of thing, or getting something just going and taking that next step without trying to boil the ocean?
Again, I think it's a simple rather than complex model. It's 5 lines of input and 5 to 10 lines of output. Force yourself to focus on just the big things and put everything else into one line. Really just sort of check yourself at the door. Perfection is the enemy of good, right? The fact that you can get something done on a Monday afternoon is much better than delivering it on a Wednesday morning. So you have to just consciously move yourself into a Zen state of approximate rather than the focused state of completely accurate. And those are 2 different areas. They're 2 different things. So I would almost set aside the same time every day, every week if you do it on a Monday or you do it on a Tuesday morning, set aside the same time each and every day and know you have to get yourself in that mode. Turn off email notifications, turn off people knocking at your door, just sort of, again, almost like get into a different state so that you can complete it and give yourself a time limit. Say, look, I'm going to work on it for 23 minutes or 30 minutes or 19 minutes or something where you say, look, I have to be done now because I have everything else to do. Because it's so easy to get caught in just the rabbit hole of 13 weeks as well.
Yeah, you can. We hear sometimes of business and where they have staff and they're spending like literally several staff a day or 2 every week before they even get to the starting point. We had one. I remember one customer said, I used to laugh because she called it. They came in before dry run. It was their Friday finance party. She would call it, and it's like 5 entities, and they're looking at their cash flows on a Friday afternoon, and there's nothing actionable you can do. And then Monday morning, it just starts all over again. Yep. And we fortunately got them up to Monday.
Yep.
It's because it felt like it was a bit of going through the motions. There just wasn't enough there to make it usable.
Well, again, there's a tendency to think that accounting and finance are paid by the spreadsheet or paid by the invoice moving from one side of the keyboard to the other. And that's not the case. Accounting and finance earn their stripes by letting the rest of the organization know what's working, what's not working, and what to do about it. And, the going through the motions part is very, very common, especially as you grow. And people often take they scale the business by adding more resources at the same inefficient process rather than thinking about how can we do this differently. And so I think, another piece to consider is when it moves beyond a few person hours to do something, when it becomes, I can't get the answer I need in the time it needs to be done, that's where you need to either look at not doing it, which is not a good answer, or getting technology in. There's so much technology available out there. And again, going to bandwidth, you don't have time to visit all the vendors, go to the shows. You don't have time to see what's out there, what the new product announcements are, keep up on things. But try and find some time during each week, or maybe a day a month, a few hours a month, to kind of think forward about where technology is. And if you've investigated some of these tools in the past, reinvestigate them, because you're always adding new features. There's always new things coming out. This is a difficult area, and whatever might not have worked as much 3 months ago or 6 months ago might work much better now. Or you might feel as though you have more of a need now. You might be more educated internally as to what you might need. So continue to take a look at those things, rather than just keep getting caught in the same month over month cycle or week over week cycle that happens. I also want to focus on something you mentioned a little while ago about the movement of money. We call that velocity, if you will, and I think that's often overlooked as well. And I think the accounting and certainly the finance department can help business owners, management teams, and other C-level and VP level executives understand that a dollar that moves through the organization rapidly is a dollar that can be redeployed rapidly and redeployed to profitable operations. So oftentimes there's a sunk cost theory approach to inventory. Well, I paid $10 for that, so I can't sell it for $9. Yet they'll keep it in inventory for 36 months, trying to wait for that $11 sale. It doesn't matter what you paid for it. It matters what you can sell it for today. And if I can free up that $9, if I can somehow find a way to put that $9 away from the unprofitable purchase that was, into something that has maybe a $2 profit margin, and I can do that 10 times a year, that's $20 that I've made from that $9 versus the $2 or $1 loss that I have for 36 months sitting there. So I think there's a real opportunity to think about the velocity of things. And again, that 13-week cash flow, if there's one customer that continues to not pay you, that's money that you can't deploy to other profitable operations in the business. So it's not just about the static profit and loss picture. It's not just about the static margin number. It's about that velocity of money, which is called working capital, which again, if you're a growing organization, the good news is sales are up. The bad news is working capital is very strained.
Yeah. I think you just sort of hit the nail on the head in so many parts there, that it's this 13-week cash flow forecast is just kind of giving you it's like the barometer or the temperature, right? Like there's a lot of moving parts, and it's going to help you uncover not only kind of what's happening near term, but also uncover a little bit of why isn't money moving through? Where is it stalling out? Are we giving too long a terms? Are we, like there's a million places that dollars can grind to a halt in an organization. And so it not only is that near term look at what's happening, but there's something going on here. There's a little bit of smoke there must be a fire somewhere.
Grinding to a halt. I like that. That's a good visual, right? You can see just where stuff just sits and festers, and that's what we need to address. No matter how bad the story might be, no matter how painful it might be to fix it, letting it fester like any wound is only going to make it worse. And in some cases, you might lose something.
Yeah, exactly. Ken, this has been a terrific, I could probably go on for another hour about this, but I know we've kind of come up on our time here. So can you give me a little bit of an idea what you're up to today, and how people can get hold of you if they want to chat with you?
Sure. We're all about helping businesses and their organizations understand their numbers better, and really helping them figure out the problems that they need fixing and helping them drive towards that. You can tell we're very much focused on high level stuff and driving those things to success, and kind of letting a lot of those little details just sort of work themselves out. So we're at insightfulpartners.com. We work with companies that are growing from 10 million up into that $50 to $100 million range, and really facing that difficulty of adding to their finance staff. We're your data partners, your finance partners. We help you build that finance organization until you can truly hire the right people and staff it correctly.
Thank you so much, Ken. I really appreciate you being on the show. I'm going to put your contact info down in the show notes. So anyone want to get hold of Ken, just look down on the notes there. You'll find the information. And I also want to mention, if you are buried in spreadsheets, you and your finance team, and especially if cash flow is a real problem for you, ARAP timing issues, multi-entity, moving money around, come and visit us at driving.com. We'll help you out. We'll get you out of those spreadsheets. We'll save you a ton of time and give you visuals that the management team will love. Thanks again, Ken. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Blaine. Enjoyed it.